In 1922, a film came out that sought to adapt Bram Stoker's classic novel Dracula without the license for the book Dracula. Now, this film eventually did come out and was titled Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror. That film has been remade in 2024, and this is my review for it. Hey everyone, I'm K-Swope. Hope you guys are all having a nice day. I just got out this evening from seeing Nosferatu, the new one, in theaters. And so I figured, you know what, better late than never. I'm going to throw this review up, let you know what I think about it. Normally in my reviews, here's what I do. I usually take the good things about the movie, talk about those, the bad things I found in the movie, talk about those, and then, of course, I will rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. Now, 1 being stepped on a Lego brick, 10 being Citizen Kane, okay? So, got a pretty big distinction right there. The reason I bring that up, I want to talk about it specifically, is because I'm actually not going to be giving it a scale from 1 to 10 rating. It's very, very important for me to mention because normally I do it, and there's a lot of reasons why I'm not going to do that because I have some really nuanced thoughts that I think just don't make it simply just good or bad, and I'll explain all of that when I dive into things. But let's go ahead and start with the good things of this film. First things first, the opening of this movie, like the 2 or 3 minutes before the title card hits, are fantastic. They're absolutely gripping, and they had my attention. I cared deeply of what was going on just straight off the bat. So that's just really, really good, very, very well written and well executed. Something else is this movie, generally speaking, did a really good job of keeping my attention. I'm the kind of person where in certain movies, if they're really slow, I kind of get really bored and I lose my attention, really fast. And for me, nothing makes a movie worse, in my personal opinion, than it being boring. I cannot say it was boring. I say, I was watching it the whole way through. I was definitely invested in the plot and what was going on the whole time. So, of course, got to give credit where credit is due there. I also have to give credit to the cinematography because the movie looked amazing. Every shot just looked really, really meticulous and thought out. It's very dark as far as color goes, and it's not very vibrant or bright, but there was a lot of color, and I think they did a really, really great job taking a movie that came out in 1922. That's like, 103 years ago now? It's 2025 now, so about 103 years ago, which is crazy to think about. They took that movie, and it was monochrome, it was in black and white, and in this film, they don't add a bunch of color, but they do it in such a way that it feels like it's paying tribute with how they choose to do that in the cinematography to the original one, and I think that is a very, very nice thing to do, and that it worked out really, really well. Now, before I get my next point, I do need to say something. There are 2 books in my life that have the most impact on me personally. The first one, of course, being the Bible, because obvious reasons, duh. The next one, of course, being none other than Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is the same copy right here that I read back in high school. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because I am not a big fan of books, not a big fan of reading. The reason that this book had so much impact on me, especially reading fiction, not a big fan of that, is because I had to read it in high school. I was kind of forced to read it. I got to choose which books I wanted to read, and I chose this one. But it's the first book I ever read that actually made me feel something. That feeling being fear. I was reading it. It was specifically the part toward the beginning when Jonathan Harker is in Castle Dracula, and Dracula's vampire wives or whatever the heck they are kind of cornering him. They're getting ready to kind of feast on him is kind of what it felt like. I was reading that and I felt suspense, I felt dread. And so I absolutely loved, since the original Nosferatu was a unlicensed Dracula movie, basically. I really liked seeing the parallels between Dracula and this movie because they did something really interesting. They follow it very closely to the source material up until about the halfway point. Then they kind of throw some curveballs. They're like, okay, we're going to set it up like Dracula was set up, but then we're going to throw a whole new dynamic into things to make it different. And it was. And so that was really unique and interesting. I'm going to touch more on that a little later when I get more into my conclusion. But in the meantime, just keep in mind that I really, really liked that aspect of the movie. Something else I got to bring up too. I also really, really liked how they handled certain things. There's one thing specifically I liked how they handled in this movie better than in the original Dracula book. That being, they had I forget the guy's name, but the Renfield-esque character, okay? So Renfield in the book, he's this deranged guy who's basically like a pawn for Dracula, who's obsessed with just consuming life. The way they handled it in this was so much more nuanced and made more sense, if you ask me, because they actually had the Renfield-esque character being the Jonathan Harker's character, I forget his name, he's Nicholas Holt's character, making him his real estate boss, which is also why he sends him to Count Dracula. Not Count Dracula, I'm sorry. I'm going to be doing that this whole video, by the way, because I'm much more familiar with Dracula than Nosferatu. But Count Orlok's castle in Transylvania, he sends him there because he has nefarious ties from the start, which I thought was really interesting. And it feels a lot less random because, you know, when I'm reading the book, when I'm watching any adaptation of it, I'm just keep thinking to myself, how exactly did the Count orchestrate all this stuff to pull this whole real estate deal together? Like, did he go scout the land? How can he do that? Because it's a big ordeal for him to, you know, leave his castle and, you know, with the whole vampire, all this and that, you know. It's going to come with some problems. But that kind of fixes that problem, and so I think that made for a really, really interesting and unique twist that I liked especially. So that's generally the good things I have to say about this movie. I'm going to go into the bad things, and this is where the conversation is going to get a little more nuanced, but I'll try to save the more nuanced points toward the end. First thing I'll talk about is the editing. I was not a very big fan of, specifically in Act 1. It wasn't bad in Act 2 and Act 3. I had no complaints there. But in Act 1, the editing just felt really choppy and like they were trying to almost go for some cheap scares. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't dislike... Well, I'm going to rephrase that. I hate jump scares, but I don't dislike them in concept because they work, at least on me. So it's not a problem with that I had. It was mostly a problem with just feeling really choppy and just going from one scene to another where I guess time's supposed to pass and they just kind of do hard cuts and things like that. And it doesn't look bad. Like I said, the cinematography is good. It's just, I don't like it. It's kind of distracting. So there's that at least. I also really hate Count Orlok's design in this movie, how his character looks, because Nosferatu, in case you didn't know, they actually rebooted it again. I think it was in like the late 70s, if I'm not mistaken. So there's 2 Nosferatu movies before this one. And in both of those movies, his design is pretty consistent. In this, not so much. He kind of looks the same in terms of his mannerisms, his long fingernails, things like that. Bill Skarsgård, the acting, by the way, was all really good in this movie. Bill Skarsgård did it really good. But for some reason, he had a mustache. He looked like a half-rotting corpse. And he had some hair on the top of his head. And it just felt weird. It felt kind of off. Like, it's not the Count Orlok that I think of when I hear the name or I see the footage or that clip from SpongeBob that keeps getting recirculated since the new movie's coming out. And so, yeah, I'm just not a fan of that. Something else I need to talk about, too. And I'm going to warn you, this section's going to get a little graphic. But let's put it like this. I'm a Christian man. And I watch a lot of stuff. And out of all the stuff I watch, you know, there's certain content, there's certain things that doesn't bug me as much, but there's one thing specifically that really bugs me a lot in film, and that thing happens to be like sex and nudity, okay? That really, I can't stand that, and this movie has way too much of it to the point where, like, it really, really took a lot away from my opinion of this movie, because I've talked about in previous reviews, like the Die Hard reviews, how I just don't like needless nudity when there's scenes where someone is not wearing clothes when they could be wearing clothes and it's just for no apparent reason, or, you know, things like that. I really, really hate that. They also, and I've not seen the original Nosferatu, so I don't know if this was a plot point in the original one or not, or how that looked, but the whole thing just feels so sexual, and I'm just like kind of grossed out by that. I'm like Dracula, like there's a little bit of like a sexy vibe to Dracula because, you know, that's where you get like the idea for Twilight and stuff like that and the whole vampire romance kind of thing. So that's always kind of been there, but they just really just dive into, I don't know, I guess it's the most perverse version of that, and it just really, I really, really don't like it. And to be quite honest, because of all this content in this movie, I probably can't recommend it to anybody in good faith. And the thing is, too, most of the scenes I'm talking about could probably have been cut and they wouldn't have affected much. Now, there is the ending, which I have more thoughts on. In the ending, you could have shown less nudity. I would have greatly appreciated that. I would have greatly preferred that. But, yeah, I mean, I guess the plot with how heavily you set up some of these plot points, I mean, you needed some, I guess for lack of a better term, intimacy. And it's just, I really, really, really did not like that. And that was a big factor in me really having some issues with this movie, and I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But in the meantime, it was pretty bad. You know what else was bad? This one, ooh, okay, this may have been, I think, the worst part of the movie for me. So, spoiler alert, in case you didn't know, there's sort of this whole long distance, like, sexual thing between Lily Rose Depp's character and Count Orlok, which is kind of confusing and hard to explain. But essentially, when her husband, who's Nicholas Holt's character, okay, the Jonathan Harker type of guy, there's a scene where he, like, puts him in a trance, and then okay, again, I apologize, I'm going to get pretty graphic here, but he kind of starts humping him, and then it's almost like Lily Rose Depp's character is, like, on the receiving end of it, we'll put it like that, and it is pretty, like, let me just put it like this. It's the worst thing I've seen in a long time. It's the worst thing I've seen in a long time. Yeah, it was just, like, it just makes me feel so, like, oh, this is just disgusting. This is just, like, really uncomfortable. Like, I want to crawl out of my own skin. It's that really, like, ugh. So, yeah, that's pretty awful, pretty bad. Not much more to say about that, but there's just so much of this in this movie that just really... The plot is not bad in and of itself, but it's just... You intertwine all of this, like, sexual stuff into it, and it's just, like... You're making it worse. You're making it to the point where, like I said, I can't really recommend it to anybody because I cannot in good faith promote that kind of content. It's really, really bad. Very, very... I was very, very uncomfortable. Put it like that. In the theater, I was very, very uncomfortable. So yeah, again, I really don't know what else to say about it. I really don't know. I have not seen the original Nosferatu, as I mentioned before, so I don't know how much of that is inspired from the original one, how much is needed as a result of the original one. I kind of want to go back and watch it just to get some context, the original one, but again, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know, but it was not great. It's the biggest problem. But the last problem I have with the movie, and I do have a good thing to say about this at the end, but the ending, I didn't get it either. Like, what exactly is it that killed him in the end? I know that they have the whole prophecy thing where she had to basically give in to him in order to defeat him, but then he's defeated, and I don't really understand why exactly. I mean, the sunlight comes up and it hits him, but we also don't have much emphasis to know that the sunlight's really bad on him. So it just felt kind of awkward and kind of strange and weird. So again, I really don't know what the heck that was about. So, I don't know. But the one thing I will say, and I look for this in every movie that I watch, I try to find what truth is there in this movie. And I will say, the Lily Rose Depp's character, okay, basically what her story arc is, she sacrifices herself over the course of 3 days to save, basically, the world, all of the German town that she's in, because there's a bad plague spreading, thanks to, our Count Orlok, to defeat him and save the people that she loved. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, because there was someone who did come and die over the course of 3 days, except this person actually came back, and that person, of course, being none other than Jesus Christ, which you should totally read about in my favorite book of all time, which is not Dracula. It's none other than the Bible, right? So, I'm going to recommend you guys go check that out. Definitely go read your Bible. You should be doing that every day. If you're not, highly recommend that there. But, in the meantime, I guess that's my thoughts on Nosferatu. I'm not giving it a rating on 1 to 10. And here's why. Because the movie... The only instance in which I think I could recommend this is if there's a die-hard Dracula fan who just wants to see a unique twist or spin on the Dracula story. That is the only instance I think I would recommend this to anybody. I don't think it was terrible as a movie and as a plot, because like I said, it largely follows the book, Dracula, and so I have no complaints with that because I love the book. But they just make some creative choices that I can't quite recommend. And usually I'll do my scale from 1 to 10. And if it's above a 5, then I might recommend it to somebody. But then again, I also don't think in good conscience I can give that movie, with all the content it has in it, that high a rating. But it's really weird, so I'm kind of torn. So that's kind of my thoughts on Nosferatu, the 2024 movie. But hey, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I know I gave you guys a lot of my Christian worldview in this as well when it comes to these kind of topics and things like that. And I guess, for lack of a better term, my sensitivity to it and how I really didn't like it and made me feel kind of uncomfortable. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think. If you have any comments about that, feel free to drop below. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say conversationally. Also, if you like this video, please drop a like. If you absolutely hated it, drop a dislike. I'm fine either way. But if you want to see more of my content, more reviews, more commentary, I'm working on a lot more commentary because some of my videos I've done lately have been doing pretty good. So I'm planning on doing a lot more of that. But if you like this stuff, hit the subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate that. But in the meantime, I'm K-Swope. I will see you in the next one.